Today's episode marks the 100th episode of the Deep Shallow Dive podcast. We just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to you for listening and for all your support. Please know that it is appreciated.
Okay, let's go.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and 100. Today is episode number 100, and this is going to be funny. But this episode is not, or did not turn out the way I wanted it to. But you know what? I decided, screw it. I'm going to go with it. And so what I mean by that is, honestly, I've been building up to this episode for a couple weeks now. I've really been trying to think about doing something different. And quite frankly, it was going to be the first video episode that I was going to do, meaning that I would basically film it as if I was, on camera the entire time. So instead of audio, just audio, I'd have the video counterpart or complement to it. And then through Spotify, you basically could see the video if you wanted to, but there's really not other podcast players that allow you to see the video. But I would then put the video on YouTube and start doing that. And so yesterday I filmed a bunch of stuff. I filmed, what I thought would be the episode. Oh my God. And I hated it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way my hair looked. That's so vain. I know, but you know what? It is what it is. That's real talk. And I don't know. I just didn't like it. It just didn't look the way I wanted it to look. And, then the other thing is when you want to record something, like a full episode on camera, you pretty much have to script that out. And so when you script it out, you need to read off of a teleprompter. So I have a teleprompter app. I load up my script inside my iPad. I've got, one of those big 12.9-inch iPads. So it's pretty big. So I've got the camera, and then I've got the iPad, which basically plays your script, and you're reading off the script. But man, I just my eyes looked goofy, because you're reading. So you're sort of reading down. I just was not comfortable. And honestly, I think it showed in my, the video, but then even in the audio, the audio did not flow the way it, kind of is flowing now, which is because I'm sitting behind a microphone, basically looking at the track moving on GarageBand on my computer, and it's just flowing, And so, I deleted it. I deleted the whole thing. I wasted 3 hours. Holy mackerel! But it's okay, because honestly, it kind of made me want to talk about something different, and do the 100th episode a little bit differently. And so instead of, trying to pull out all the bells and whistles for the 100th episode, I mean, seriously, I spent so much time internalizing this, instead, I'm just going to free flow today, and I'm just going to kind of talk from the heart, and I'm going to talk about some things about this journey that I've learned, and I'm going to talk about, some of the challenges and all of that. And I realized that, you don't have to be perfect when you do everything in life. And one of the things that I kind of fault myself on is, whenever I want to start something and whether I want to do something, this part I don't fart. I was about to say fart myself. This part I do not fault myself, but, I immerse myself in the topic, and I look at it every which way but Tuesday. And is that an expression, every which way but Tuesday? I think that is. Well, that's perfect for this episode. No, it is not. It is not an expression. The expression is actually every which way from Sunday. And then there's also another expression, 6 ways to Sunday. But there's no mention of Tuesday. It looks like Tuesday is not in the mix at all, and I just made that up. All right, there you have it. Fantastic. Let's just keep rolling with it. Anyway, what I was saying was, I really thoroughly vet everything, and, I overanalyze everything, and I try to, become an expert at it before I start. And, I think that honestly, I think that's a good quality to an extent, but I tend to overcomplicate things a lot. And I don't know if a lot of you are the same, but, I overcomplicate things, and sometimes it basically leads to things taking longer than they should. And so, what's been interesting is one of the things that I have learned from this younger generation, and I've really learned a lot about this younger generation since the situation started in Israel and Palestine, because they've been so vocal about it, is that just go and just flow and really just pivot. I've incredibly admired the resilience, which is a deep, shallow dive pillar, one of my 4 pillars, but I've admired the resilience of this younger generation. And I'm talking like, let's say starting at 16, 17. And what I'm really talking about are the content creators that I see. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible what I'm seeing in terms of young kids speaking their mind and speaking their truth. And I love that. I love that. I mean, I don't have my own kids. I wish I did. I wish I had a teenager right now that I could really talk about all these things with. But I think it's incredible that with all the bad of social media, honestly, and there is a lot of bad, social media in many ways has created, it's created a couple things. One, it's created a situation where, people are only putting their best foot forward on the things they post, which is honestly like probably 10%, 20%, I hope more, but it's not always the case. And so, there's just a lot of false images and personas that get created on social media. And then there's, the jealousy factor. You've got people that, kind of flaunt things on social media, whether it's their cars, their house, their wealth, even the picture of like, a $200 steak at Mastro's or something. That's like, that stuff is nonsense. That stuff is nonsense. And, that's the type of stuff that really, I think, feeds the negative of social media. It's created this, voyeuristic, I guess, platform in nature. And I'm guilty of it as well. I really am. I will say one of the things that I pride myself on is calling a spade with myself, and knowing that, like, okay, you talk about this stuff, but dude, you're doing it as well. And I really am. Not the posting of the steaks and cars and stuff like that. I'd never do anything like that. But there's a voyeuristic element to it, and you're sort of like, seeing what other people are doing and creeping a little bit and all that. That's just real talk. That's just real talk. I think everybody has done that to an extent. If this was video right now, we'd cut to a scene of everybody shaking their heads, and they're like, no, Ray T. You're the only weirdo that does that. But I will say what I've seen, which is incredible to me in terms of the social media, starting with the younger generation, is that, they're expressing themselves, and they're pivoting, and they're using it for research. And then they're taking that research in, and they're formulating opinions. They're formulating their views on things. And that runs from politics to social issues to all of that. And I really think that's amazing. And it's very enjoyable for me to watch. And I'll be honest, I've learned a lot. Like, I've learned from young content creators. Like, I watch the way they film things and the way they do things, or, the way they have cuts in their videos, or the way, they maintain eye contact with the camera and then sometimes look away and things like that. I've really learned from these young creators, and I think that's incredible. I think that's really incredible, and I think we need to embrace that. And that's one of the reasons why it really scares me a little bit when you talk about the concept of the banning of TikTok, because again, I'm all for regulation, but really this content that I just spent a few minutes talking about, it's all getting created for that younger generation on TikTok. They're not on Facebook. They are on Instagram. But the funny thing is 90% of the reels you're seeing on Instagram, maybe not that high of a percent, but man, a big percentage of them, they're created in TikTok. So people are creating them in TikTok and then sharing them to Instagram. Or they're taking clips from YouTube, leveraging those clips, and then they're creating stuff in TikTok and then bringing it into Instagram. So this whole infrastructure that we're experiencing and in many ways enjoying, in some ways maybe getting bothered by, but TikTok is a crucial part of that in terms of the creation aspect. And like I said, I think it's given a platform for the younger generation who feels like they're not being heard right now. They really do. They feel like they're not being heard, but it gives them a chance to be heard amongst themselves and then even amongst the adults. And so, just to conclude on that, what I really see taking place, and really, one of the awakenings I've had that I do want to try and really share and properly articulate is that, again, when I look at let's use that TikTok as an example, and then we'll move on from there. But when I look at the lawmakers and the folks that are coming out against it, I guarantee you they have probably never even been on the platform. They've never even seen what it looks like, what it can do. By the way, here's another part. There's an entire STEM section: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There's a whole tab for STEM where, oh my gosh, you want to go down a rabbit hole and see some really cool stuff. Click on the STEM tab and go take a look at some of the content there. It's incredible. I've learned so much. But what I was saying was, when I look at the lawmakers and the folks that are coming out against TikTok, it has become so obvious that this is not their opinion. This is the opinion of something else, someone else, that they are being bought in order to talk about. And so what I think one of the things that we're going to continue to talk about, and that I think is going to play out over the course of the next several months, is this concept of misinformation and disinformation, and then the ability of AI to create fake everything, whether that's voices, images, videos. They can create fake simulated phone calls, all of this stuff. To me, that could be a setup, or that could be a conduit, so to speak, in terms of really limiting social media as we get closer to the 2024 election. And so I think limiting Facebook, Instagram, even Twitter, YouTube, that's possible. I don't know how possible it is to limit TikTok, as in the content on TikTok, without a direct connection with ByteDance, which is the parent of TikTok. And then obviously ByteDance, I'm sure, is in cahoots with the Chinese government. So I think TikTok presents a challenge. And so maybe that's one of the reasons why, there's such a focus on limiting it or eliminating it. So anyway, I did want to kind of touch on all that to begin with. But the other thing is, and really this is where I'm going to probably spend the most of, or the rest of this episode talking about, is, when I started this, I really didn't know what it was going to evolve into and what it was going to become. What I did know is that I had a different lens, and that lens basically started, that first Friday in March of 2020 where they told us to stay home for the weekend. And that just was weird to me. I mean, it was just weird. And all of a sudden I was like, what is that? Like, man, I live in America. Like, what? Stay home for the weekend? What is not leave my house? What are you talking about? So it was just odd to me. And, it really caused me to kind of really wake up. And honestly, that's the beginning of everything for me. And that's been the beginning of just looking at things, I don't want to say differently, but maybe a little more differently, a little more critically, absolutely. But also looking at things from, oh my God, I can't believe, God, I wish Steve Jobs was alive today. I would have to send him a royalty every time I use this quote of his. But it really does. When he talked about everything in this world that you use, including this microphone that I'm recording on, this computer that I'm using. Thank you, Steve Jobs, for that. The GarageBand software that I'm using to edit, everything, the cup of coffee that I'm drinking right now during takes. All of this stuff is created by people no smarter than you. And when you really apply that to politics, these politicians and government in general and everything actually, you could even scope that up to, CEOs, celebrities, professional athletes might be a little different because obviously that requires I don't think everyone can just become a professional athlete. And obviously I don't think everyone can become even a CEO or even a politician because you have to have the right demeanor. But the bottom line is, really, people are people. We really are all the same. At the end of the day, we are all the same. We all put on our pants one leg at a time. I think most people do that. I do that. And, that concept of not feeling superior or better than anyone else, that's another thing that unfortunately social media brings out. It brings out the ability to feel better than other people. And, that's fine if it strokes your ego, and that's fine if that gives you security. But again, don't get it twisted. At the end of the day, every human being on this planet fundamentally is the same. And they fundamentally probably want the same things, and that is just to be happy, just to be happy. And so all of this other stuff, it's just white noise. It's really just white noise. And if you can really ground yourself to that concept, and I will say, that's what this podcast has done for me. It's really helped me ground myself. Now, I've always felt I was pretty grounded. I really have. But it's really made me feel even more grounded. And it's really made me become aware of other people, even more than I ever used to be, become aware of my surroundings, become aware of, what's going on in the world, look at everything from a, it's not even critical. Like everything doesn't have to be critical. And, I sometimes feel like when I go back and listen to my episodes or when I go back and kind of think through things, I'm like, dude, you're so serious. And for any of you that know me in real life, and I think for those that don't and that have listened to, a decent amount of episodes on this podcast, I'm pretty funny and I'm kind of a goofball. And, I definitely love self-deprecating humor. I absolutely relish making fun of myself. But sometimes I feel like I'm just so serious on this thing. And that's one thing moving forward I am going to try and be better about. And so all of that comes down to one thing, and it's going to be the thing that I end with. And that is vulnerability. Man, that's a hard word to pronounce. Vulnerability. Vulnerable is pretty easy, but then you add the ability part to it and it becomes, it's like, blah, vulnerable. Blah. Anyway, being vulnerable. And that's it, man. That's my biggest learning after 100 episodes of yapping on this microphone is that just let yourself be vulnerable. Let yourself be vulnerable. And it, doesn't have to be to the public the way maybe I sometimes do it and am doing it presently, but to at least your loved ones, at least, your friends, the ones that are closer to you, because being vulnerable, I mean, it's truly a asset. It's not a liability. And that really was why I kind of embarked on the book, and, that's coming soon. And so at the end of the day, classic Ray D, at the end of the day, I just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you to everybody for, if you've listened to one episode or if you've listened to 100 episodes, I truly appreciate it. I really do. And even though this episode in many ways was an epic fail, I mean, it really was like the duddiest dud of 100th episode. I thought this was going to be like, confetti and fireworks and all that. It's fine. It's fine because, I'd rather do this actually. Now that I think about it, I'd rather do this because this to me shows that this is about continual growth. It's about a shift in mindset, and shifting your mindset to one that doesn't have to get it right on the first time every time, and doesn't have to be perfect, and doesn't need the world to think they're perfect, and really one that just kind of anchors itself honestly on, these pillars that I'm going to start to talk about more. And that's self-awareness, that's resilience, that's being authentic, and that's having empathy. I mean, I feel like if you practice those in your daily life with people, and most importantly, practice those with yourself, practice self-awareness, practice resilience, practice empathy, practice being authentic, and if not practice, be aware of that, of those, I guess, concepts. I feel like that is what will just lead to a happier life, and it'll lead to a life that is rooted in integrity, because at the end of the day, if you have that, I feel like you've got a lot. So anyway, epic fail of an episode. It is what it is. I do appreciate it. Call a spade, and there's a lot to come. I'm going to get this video thing down. I'm going to increase the footprint, and we're going to deep shallow dive into you. We're going to deep shallow dive into me. We're going to deep shallow dive into each other. Oh, that sounds kind of weird. But that's it, everybody. Call a spade. Thank you for 100. Here's to 100 more and more and more.
This episode was a complete epic fail, but still brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. We will stick by our guy through thick and thin and not pull our sponsorship, but do better, Ray D. Just do better, bro.